Hey everybody, welcome back to Kicks Over Coffee. Thanks for joining us in on a brand new episode. We've interviewed these folks in the past, and this episode is going to be very interesting because we're going to go deeper than where we were on comfort and defining comfort and thinking about comfort. So I want to welcome back Justin and Sherri from the Force Lab and INSITE Insoles. Welcome back, guys. Thanks for coming back on.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Thanks for having us. We're excited to talk about it.
And just so people, if you didn't watch the first edition, please go back and watch it. But if we want to quickly remind people about what the Force Lab is, and as folks look behind you, it's very interesting some of the equipment you have. If you just want to quickly explain the Force Lab.
Yeah, Sherri, how about you take it away, since Sherri's in the lab every single day here.
I will do. This is my second home. I live here in the Force Lab. Been operating out of here for about a year and a half now. It's a relatively new lab. We've got a full motion capture system. We've got 10 infrared cameras, 2 high-speed cameras at frontal and sagittal angles. We've got 3 force plates here. We also do a lot of testing here academically with students and some capstone studies we've got happening in the lab right now. Very exciting. But what I do the most here is our proven comfort testing. We utilize this space to bring in participants to go through our testing system and give us feedback on comfort for all different types of shoes, everything from hiking to walking, basketball, golf, you name it, we've tested it. So
yeah, because the last time we talked, we were just talking about the concept of comfort, right? And comfort can mean so many different things to so many different people. And you just talked about even product type, right? Like what I might feel comfortable in hiking shoes, I'm not going to feel comfortable in brunch shoes or running shoes. So there's this, I guess, this overarching idea of what comfort is and is to brands, but may not be to consumers. And so I know you guys have scientifically developed this proven comfort method of footwear testing. And as folks can look in the background and see all the different, as she was talking about, the cameras and all the different, even on the floor, you have markings and stuff. So I'm guessing you went about this very scientifically. If you've got this great lab there, maybe you can explain what this kind of method is and how it's proven out, and then the methodology of how you determine this. And then we can get into how brands can use this.
Yeah, no, for sure. So this relationship actually couldn't have been done without the fact that I went to grad school here and did a lot of my research. Christine, who was on the last podcast, Dr. Christine Pollard, we have a very tight-knit relationship. She was my mentor. So in terms of being able to have a full-time lab manager housed inside of their lab, especially being from industry, not trying to step on any of the academics' toes, we're in here and it's a very lively lab. There's multiple groups testing and stuff. So being able to actually have the industry in here in an academic lab is actually very hard to pull off. There's a lot of tight-knit relationships that have to be built. And the way we went about it is looking at, not just proving out what is a more comfortable condition, but also what are the components of comfort. So we've developed, it's basically a 3-tiered system. The first tier is using impact testing. So more of a materials look at it. So it's an objective materials impact tester. It looks at the whole shoe, the insole and the shoe combined. So you look at midsole properties and insole properties. So that's our first kind of tip of the spear with our system, to look at it objectively. How does the materials respond from 8.5 kilograms dropping at a 50 millimeter height, impacting the material, and how it rebounds and how that responds. So that's kind of our first tip. The next is then we have to describe comfort. We have to somehow quantify comfort, and that's been a tall task. However, a lot of work between Sherri and I about 2 years ago, really digging into the literature around perception testing and sensory research, and put together what is considered more of a kind of a gold standard in the perception world, is using visual analog scales. So it's basically a spectrum, and you score it basically on a spectrum rather than the typical, how do you feel? You go to the doctor's office, right? It's, how do you feel at a score of 1 to 5? 1 being very unhappy to 5 being ecstatic.
Right. And that could be subjective too, because it depends on whether you got a good parking spot, or whether somebody
Yes.
cut you off,
Exactly.
any of that, right? So like even you walk into a department store and either you're feeling good and ready to spend, or something happened in the parking lot and you're mad and you're like, none of this feels good, right?
You bring up a great point. And
Yeah.
Sherri, you could talk a little bit about that, because we have a lot of subject variability when it comes to perception testing, because we're taking a subjective concept, right? A comfort, and then we're applying numbers to it to be able to quantify and use statistics. So sometimes we have to stratify, or at least be aware of certain demographic differences, which Sherri goes right into.
So our system is when our participants come in, of course, it's standard scientific process to take down their basic biodemographics and get their height and their weight and all of those things. Because we do the perception testing and we do understand that how you're feeling in this very moment affects your responses with perception, we have a little 4-question check-in that we do with every single participant, and they cover 4 different areas of energy, mood, food, and time. So it's that simple. And we just ask them, how's their energy today? Are they feeling well rested? Are they energetic? Are they feeling tired? And then when we talk about mood, it's like, are you stressed? Is it midterms? You've been studying all night? And then we talk about food, because I know very well how being hungry affects how I feel about things. Mm-hmm. So we ask them if they're stuffed, if they're eating too much, are they satisfied or hungry, and we invite them to use any adjectives that describe their time, where they are in the moment. Mm-hmm. And then we ask them about their time. Do they have plenty of time? Are they rushed? Or this just isn't going to work. So those 4 sort of pre-testing determinants give us an idea of, one, where they're at. And it also helps us later if we're looking into the testing information and we're seeing some results that are a little bit like, wow, those are really on the far edges of things. We can look back at that and we can go, oh, they weren't having the best day that day.
Half of them weren't caffeinated.
Perception.
They have enough coffee.
Yeah. It affects perception. So perception is, it's a really tricky science, and the system that we've designed is just specifically made to tease out very specific parts of what's working and what's not. Someone may put on a shoe and go, the heel cushion feels great, I really like it, but I'm not feeling an arch support. Or, there's not enough cushioning in the forefoot. It helps us to actually tease out what is comfortable about the shoe and what is not working. So our first few questions are very specific to underfoot insole feel. And then it broadens out as it goes to more broader system questions like stability and firmness and flexibility of the shoe, because it is a system. The insole and the midsole and the outer sole, then the upper, create a whole entire system. And this allows us to look at the different pieces of everything. Because they may say, oh, this shoe's really comfortable except for the arch support. It's just hitting me in the wrong place, which is great. That means that we're doing something right, and there's something that we can look at that we can change to improve that shoe. It might not be a whole don't throw the baby away with the bathwater. Right. It's like, let's look at what's working, because we can see that very clearly through our testing. And the nice thing about the visual analog scale is that it's set up so that the participant doesn't see any numbers, so they're not quantifying anything. There are 2 different types of questions on the test, and one of them, especially in the beginning when we're talking about insoles, say for an example of cushioning, the visual analog scale starts out with a slider right in the middle, and that's their ideal shoe. So they have 2 lesser ideals at either end of the option, and we just tell them, you slide it in the appropriate direction. Too much or too little cushioning, to the appropriate amount that it's not your ideal shoe, or leave it at ideal if it's your perfect shoe. So that helps us. But the beauty of that is they're not putting a number on it. They're not saying, is it a 7 or is it an 8? They're not thinking about that. It's strictly perceptive. It's a feeling. It is a feeling. So then we can quantify that in the background and do statistics and take a look at the general trends. It's a great tools.
Yeah, we get both. So the reason why the ideal is in the middle is we get both the magnitude of the difference, but also the direction. For stability, is it too stable? Is it too chunky? Very firm, or is it really unstable? Is it like, rocking all over the place, super? So at least you both get the magnitude of difference and also the directional difference as well. So that's the second piece, which we could dive super far into perception.
It sounds like it.
I could talk about that for a long time. So I do it all day. We designed that system very specifically to tease out the details that help us to help our clients make better shoes.
Right.
And so regarding the biomechanics parts, so the more of the expertise of my background and Sherri's background is adding a biomechanics component. So we have materials testing on the shoe as a system. We have perception testing, so the human subjects testing to understanding how they perceive the shoe. And then we add on plantar pressure testing on top of that. And plantar pressure testing just measures what it exactly says is it's measuring the underfoot pressure during walking or running or any specific task we measure in.
Basketball?
And yes, basketball. And it gives us kind of an idea where under the foot there's hot spots, there's pressure points, there's certain areas. And on top of that, there's also a center of pressure, which shows us kind of the movement dynamics underfoot. So all three of those are basically packaged into one to give both us as, product biomechanists that are understanding why or how something is, affecting it, but also giving tools to developers to both benchmark and improve their products as well.
That's great. How, I guess it's also a subjective question, but when we talk about comfort and we ask a brand, how comfortable do you think your shoes are? All the marketing people will be like, oh, they're the most comfortable in the market, right? So we've got that in, and then we got what you guys are dealing with, fit testers and testing things out, and they'll have little twerks that are looking for that stuff. With the work that you're doing, where's the actual honest kind of, scale up? I feel like a lot of time we have returns and we know they're based on comfort or feel because you can pretty much tell what color you're going to get, right? When you're looking online. You can pretty much understand maybe the size of the shoe you're going to get based on the brand, right? Nike runs a little narrow, that, but then we get to the point where they put it on and they're testing at their house and there's some issue there. Where with this scientific method, is it allowing brands to go across all their lines and basically methodically look at, actually getting to that more perfect comfort?
So there's two main parts to that. One is more that A/B comparison. So when you're doing products, you're like, okay, we have a current product and now we have V1 of the 2.0, right? And you want to see which direction and how it's changing. But as you utilize this tool, and I can talk a little bit about predictive analytics in a second, but as we collect the same data over and over, the plantar pressure, the materials testing data, and the perception data, we're creating kind of a DNA to the brand, right? The DNA of the shoe, of how it functions mechanically and biomechanically and perception-wise. So brands can use it for that, just that quick, okay, we're making the correct product decisions, but also being able to actually benchmark all their shoes against, okay, out of our whole line of running shoes, these are the best for energy return. These are the best for ride or for the motion of the shoe. There's many ways to utilize this tool. The way I always talk about it is twofold. One, benchmark, V1 to V2 to V3. Make sure that you are improving and you're going in the right direction. But also knowing, how do I stand up against our competitors? And what we do in the lab too is we de-identify all shoes. So we tape them up, cover up all logos as best we can. Yes, it's somewhat hard to de-identify a Hoka or some sort of shoes that have a very obvious shape. But we do our best to de-identify because brand bias and even color. I mean, a lot of people don't like purple. So we have to keep that in mind as well. There's a lot of extra things we have to think about.
That's interesting. Keeping the bias out is interesting to that. It's interesting to hear that from a science-based perspective on that stuff. And I think what I have seen, if you go to the market and you look, you will see a running shoe company and they'll talk about what you just said on the different types of running shoes. This is really good for this, if you're a great runner, this is really good for this, it's really good for that. And then you can start to pick that. But I just think operationally it's fascinating because it gives you what you need in real time to say, okay, the arch support sucks. Like that's where we focus all our money and effort, right? To update that. So operationally, that's it. As we keep getting better, and then maybe you solve that problem, and then the next thing is like, oh, it's like the toe box needs like more work, or something like that, right? So you keep chasing what you're hearing from your consumer and start to adjust that, and that's where you put your money, right? I mean, I think that's
and the key point is we're repeating the same methods of testing. So it's the same methods over time. So we just completed, so we started testing about a year ago, or just a little bit over. Actually, it's going to be 2 years in July. So I need to stop saying 1 year because we're going to come up on 2 years. But we've done about 90 specific studies. So 90 studies, which is a whole lot of data. But we've repeated the same methodology over and over and over. And so now we're categorizing all the different design features of the different ones we're testing and be able to apply a little bit higher order statistical methods like predictive analytics, maybe some multiple regression type analysis to start diving in even deeper about the understanding of, is it arch support? Is it the heel cup? Is it the material of the insole, or is it the midsole material? Like, what is it that's improving comfort or reducing comfort?
Mm-hmm. It'll also help us to determine what's optimal for types of shoes. When people are hiking, if you're walking in a casual shoe, you like a nice bit of soft comfort underfoot. If you're hiking, you want some firmness. You want to be able to feel the trail, but you don't want it to be all squishy gushy inside, because then you don't feel like you have a good solid footing. So this is going to allow us to look at, optimal levels of firmness, optimal levels of density underfoot for different types of applications. So if it's a work shoe, you don't want it to be a bunch of squishy comfort underneath. You're on your feet all day long. You want a little more firmness and you want a lot of support. So this is helping us to pull all of those little elements out and make a better shoe, help clients make better shoes.
Yeah, it's almost like you have your like a whole world of research there, and a brain can come in and plug in and see where they're at, and then start to in real time, not just get the feedback, but look at what all the other data sets you have to say right off the bat, even before you start doing this testing with your testers, like, here's 3 things you can look at right now based on
exactly.
data.
It speeds you up. It helps you formulate better questions that you're much further down the road.
Mm-hmm. And last question. You guys do every type of shoe, every type of brand, right? I mean, we've been talking about all these different variants, but anybody can go to INSITE and work with you guys and go into the lab and figure out all this different fit and cover. And again, like, the returns are crazy. And sometimes it's just a person buying 5 pairs of shoes to return 4. Criminal, but it does happen. And I guess the question is if they can work closer with you to figure out, 1 or 2 things in that, it could, that's real money in their pocket over time, reducing those returns. And even in store, brick and mortar too, same thing.
Yeah.
Having the knowledge that if you walk in there and you grab a pair of known shoes from a known brand and it's consistent, you don't have to try it on in the store. You can grab it and go. Like that'd be brilliant. Like, I love that idea too. So a lot of good stuff happening there. Would hate to let you leave and not hear what you're drinking. You mentioned that they're not caffeinated. That's the 5th, right? Are you fully caffeinated? Because we'll brew you a fresh pot before you start running around the lab.
Well, Sherri made the coffee this morning, so I don't know.
I did make the coffee. This is home cold brew.
Oh, nice.
Yep, home cold brew with a little bit of creamer in it, just to give it a little bit of a smooth mid-morning punch.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us on this episode and covering, I think what's really important is, and we talk a lot about this around sustainability, right? Getting more to science-based metrics, but in the same way, we need to be more science-based on our metrics with the biomechanics and with the actual product development. I feel like for so long, we've been blessed to do a lot of work in China too. This is a whole other conversation, but doing it in China where there is more consistency. And as we start to see things shift and move, different people make shoes in different ways around the world. It's an interesting cultural thing that happens. And so different factory, different machine, different trained person making different shoes. So it's like that consistency factor of having science backing, with the product and the training and all that is, we're hitting that point now where we have to, and maybe the robots will figure it out for us with the AI. So that'd be nice too, eventually.
Yeah, I know, AI being such a hot topic right now. Eventually we'll get there.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing, right? Like we don't want to get there too quickly, but again, I appreciate you guys and what you're doing. And folks, if you're interested in working with the Force Lab and with INSITE to take a look at your product type, look at your comfort from an unbiased scientific view to make consistent comfort across your brands and understand better how to engage with your customer as well. Because we do know there is certain people want a certain feel, and when somebody might be like, I don't like that, and it's like, well, that's our brand kind of identity. So there's always interesting things around that too that we're interested in. But let me know and I'll contact and connect you with Sherri or Justin, and we'll make that happen. But again, thank you guys. Really appreciate your time. And hopefully we can catch up again soon and hear more results about what you're doing, because I'm guessing this is an ever evolving program where you're doing this and then you're going to keep adding based on what you're learning from all these the data points you have.
Much smarter in 6 months to a year. Much smarter, hopefully. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
we'll do that.
Come a
right?
long way in the last year, and looking forward to seeing where this keeps going.
That's awesome. Thank you guys.
Awesome.
Folks,
Thanks,
as
Andy.
always, keep drinking coffee, keep wearing kicks. Till the next episode. Thank you.